Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk will meet France's president, Britain's Prime Minister, the head of NATO, and leaders of Nordic and Baltic states soon, to discuss transatlantic cooperation and the war in Ukraine, he said on Saturday. The future of aid to Ukraine is among the major questions facing the European Union after Donald Trump's U.S. election victory. Trump has criticized the level of U.S. support for Ukraine's fight against Russia's invasion, and before the election promised to end the conflict before even taking office, without explaining how. The EU does not want a trade war with Beijing, but 5 years of talks have yielded no real progress, the bloc's ambassador to China said on Saturday, adding that concern was growing over Chinese market access for European medical devices. Trade frictions between the bloc and China have intensified over the past year after the EU launched an investigation into Chinese-made imports of electric vehicles, EVs, that prompted Beijing to launch probes into Europe's pork and dairy industries and curb brandy imports. New EU tariffs of up to 45.3% on Chinese EV imports came into effect last week. More than 800 leading Thai economists, including 4 former governors of the Bank of Thailand, warned on Saturday of political interference in selecting the central bank's board chairman, saying it could damage long-term economic stability. The government's nomination of former finance minister Kittiratna Ranong, a ruling party loyalist and staunch critic of Bot Governor Sethaput Suthiwartnaruput, has sparked concerns over the central bank's independence. At least 24 people were killed and more than 40 injured in a bomb blast at a railway station in Quetta in southwestern Pakistan on Saturday, police and other officials told Reuters. Pakistan is grappling with a surge in strikes by separatist ethnic militants in Balochistan province in the south, and Islamist militants in its northwest. A decades-old insurgency has destabilized Balochistan and created security concerns for projects trying to access the province's untapped resources. Russian drones attacked Ukraine's Black Sea port of Odessa overnight, killing 1 person and injuring 13 others, including 2 boys, Regional Governor Ole Kuiper said on Saturday. Several residential apartment buildings, private houses, commercial buildings, and dozens of private cars were damaged in what was the second day in a row of Russian drone attacks on the city, Kuiper said. The water was already knee-high on the ground floor of the hotel where Aitana Pushil had taken refuge when she received a text alert from the regional government of Valencia at 8 p.m. on October 29, warning people to shelter in place from severe flash floods. "We could have done with the warning about 6 hours earlier," said the 23-year-old, who had fled with other local residents and guests to the first floor of the hotel near the town of Payporta. "We were all calming down a little from the panic and drying our feet." The United States charged an Iranian man on Friday in connection with an alleged plot, ordered by Iran's elite Revolutionary Guards Corps, to assassinate President-elect Donald Trump, the Department of Justice said. Farhad Shakari informed law enforcement that he was tasked on October 7, 2024, with providing a plan to kill Trump, the department said in a statement. It said Shakari told law enforcement he did not intend to formulate such a plan within the time frame directed by the IRGC. A small Swiss village that attracted global attention last year when it was evacuated because the mountain face above it threatened to collapse onto it must be evacuated again, local officials said on Saturday. The municipality of Albula in eastern Switzerland, which includes the village Brienz, cited the risk of a rockslide like the one that narrowly missed the village in June last year after the last evacuation. Amsterdam banned demonstrations for 3 days from Friday, after overnight attacks on Israeli soccer supporters, by what the mayor called anti-Semitic hit-and-run squads, and Israel sent planes to the Netherlands to fly fans home. Mayor Femke Halsema said Maccabi Tel Aviv fans had been attacked, abused and pelted with fireworks around the city, and that riot police intervened to protect them and escort them to hotels. At least 5 people were treated in hospital. The Dutch government is investigating if possible warning signs from Israel were missed in the events leading up to this week's assaults on Israeli soccer fans Justice Minister David Van Weel said in a letter to Parliament. An investigation is still being conducted on possible warning signs from Israel, Van Weel said in his letter late on Friday evening. Russia's foreign ministry sees no grounds for talking about resuming dialogue on strategic stability and arms control with the United States at the moment, Interfax news agency reported on Saturday, citing Russia's deputy foreign minister. Sergei Ryabkov said that Moscow and Washington are exchanging signals on Ukraine through closed channels at the military and political levels, according to Interfax. Enis Al-Hinti has cut staff pay in half and asked workers to take unpaid leave in an effort to keep her hotel in ancient Petra open, as Western holidaymakers fearful of conflict shun destinations in the Middle East. A crisis across the region's tourism industry since the start of the Israel-Hamas war 13 months ago is being felt acutely in Jordan, whose border with Israel along the Red Sea and Dead Sea is studded with beach resorts. When Anastasios Sakakis pulled up the ropes of his mussel farm in the Aegean Sea last month, the devastation was clear. The lines were not heaving with mollusks as they should be at harvest time, but were instead filled with cracked, empty shells. It is the second time in 3 years that record sea temperatures have hit the mussel harvest in northern Greece, where farmers said they saw a 90% drop in the 2024 catch. Next year will be a dud too, Sakakis said, because all the seed for the coming season also perished. Federal and state authorities are investigating a wave of bigoted text messages sent anonymously that have spread alarm among Black Americans across the country this week, officials and recipients told Reuters. The messages urged recipients in multiple states, including Alabama, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Virginia, to report to a plantation to pick cotton, an offensive reference to past enslavement of Black people in the United States. The storm Raphael rapidly weakened from a hurricane to a tropical storm late on Friday, the U.S. National Hurricane Center said in an advisory. Raphael was located about 460 miles, 740 kilometers, east of the mouth of the Rio Grande, with maximum sustained winds of 70 miles per hour, 110 km/h. The Miami-based forecaster said. A constitutional court in Bolivia has barred former President Evo Morales from running again for office, ushering in a new phase in the country's long-running political crisis. Morales, who led Bolivia from 2006 to 2019, had been vying for the candidacy of his MAS party, alongside his former mentee-turned-rival, President Luis Arce. A U.S. judge on Friday set aside pending deadlines in President-elect Donald Trump's 2020 election subversion case after federal prosecutors said they were grappling with the unprecedented circumstance of his impending return to the White House. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan, in Washington, approved a request from Special Counsel Jack Smith, who is prosecuting the criminal case, to set aside the deadlines, according to a court order, while they weigh its future. The U.S. has told Qatar that the presence of Hamas in Doha is no longer acceptable in the weeks since the Palestinian militant group rejected the latest proposal to achieve a ceasefire and a hostage deal, a senior administration official told Reuters on Friday. The tiny Gulf state Qatar, alongside the U.S. and Egypt, has played a major role in rounds of so far fruitless talks to broker a ceasefire to the year-long war in Gaza. The latest round of talks in mid-October failed to produce a deal, with Hamas rejecting a short-term ceasefire proposal. For Rabab al-Hajj Yusuf, every trip to the bathroom to change her sanitary pad is a painful experience. After Israeli strikes displaced her family from their home in Lebanon to a shelter, she shares limited water with hundreds of people. Sometimes there's no water for a girl to wash and change. There's no basket in the bathroom. There's no basket for a girl to put her sanitary pad, Yusuf, 29, told Reuters. Donald Trump's Republicans held on to a narrow edge on Friday as election officials tallied the final votes that will determine control of the U.S. House of Representatives, though Democrats succeeded in flipping a pair of New York state seats. Republicans have secured at least 211 seats, 7 short of the majority in the 435-member chamber, with 24 races left to be called, according to projections by Edison Research. Republicans are set to hold a majority of at least 53 seats in the Senate. The International Criminal Court's governing body will launch an external investigation into its chief prosecutor Karim Khan over alleged sexual misconduct, two sources familiar with the matter said on Friday. Khan is called on in an internal document circulated to member states to temporarily step down from his role at the world's permanent war crimes court, based in The Hague, while an inquiry is ongoing. The undated and unsigned document, seen by Reuters, was circulated to member states by ICC staff. Peru and China will sign an updated free trade agreement during President Xi Jinping's upcoming visit to the Andean nation that would boost commerce by at least 50% between the countries, Peru's foreign minister said on Friday. In an interview with Reuters, Minister Elmer Skjaller said the Chinese president would travel to Peru with a delegation of 400 business people interested in investing in infrastructure and technology projects in the country. The free trade agreement was originally signed in 2009, and the optimized version will be signed alongside 30 other agreements designed to improve cooperation between the countries. The United Nations peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon said on Friday that the Israeli military's deliberate and direct destruction of its property was a flagrant violation of international law. The 10,000-strong UN mission, known as UNIFIL, is stationed in southern Lebanon to monitor hostilities along the blue line separating Lebanon from Israel. A man was shot and killed on Friday afternoon at São Paulo's International Airport, Brazil's busiest, authorities said, with local media reporting the murder was likely linked to organized crime. São Paulo State Security Secretary said in a statement, the murder and its cause were still under investigation. China summoned the Philippines ambassador on Friday to express its objection to two new laws in the Southeast Asian nation asserting maritime rights and sovereignty over disputed areas of the South China Sea, its foreign ministry said. China made solemn representations to the ambassador shortly after Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. signed the Maritime Zones Act and the Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act into law to strengthen his country's maritime claims and bolster its territorial integrity. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's transition team has prepared executive orders and proclamations on withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement and shrinking the size of some national monuments to allow more drilling and mining, the New York Times reported on Friday. Trump is also expected to end the pause on permitting new liquefied natural gas exports to big markets in Asia and Europe, and revoke a waiver that allows California and other states to have tighter pollution standards, according to the report. Former U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer has not been asked by President-elect Donald Trump to return to the agency overseeing trade policy in his new administration, contrary to a Financial Times report, two sources familiar with the matter said. The FT earlier reported that Lighthizer had been asked to lead Trump's trade policy from the office of the U.S. Trade Representative, citing unnamed people familiar with the talks among the Trump transition team. Military bloggers on Friday reported that Russian forces were moving closer to capturing a major town on the Eastern Front in the war in Ukraine, as part of their drive westward to capture all of the Donbas region. Bloggers on both sides reported that Russian forces had entered the village of Santsivka and were advancing from the northwest on the city of Kurakhova. Sean Diddy Combs on Friday proposed a new $50 million bail package, backed by his Florida mansion, that the music mogul hopes will win his release from the Brooklyn jail where he has been held for 8 weeks on criminal sex trafficking charges. Combs has been denied bail 3 times since his arrest, with multiple judges citing a risk that he might tamper with witnesses. The rapper and producer on September 17 pleaded not guilty to charges that he used his business empire, including his record label Bad Boy Entertainment, to transport women and male sex workers across state lines, to take part in recorded sexual performances called freak-offs. Joe Biden will become the first sitting U.S. president to visit the Brazilian Amazon when he travels to Manaus later this month, a symbolic trip given the United States is likely to see a dramatic change in climate policy under President-elect Donald Trump. The White House confirmed late on Thursday that Biden had included a visit to Manaus, a city of 2 million people in the heart of the world's largest rainforest, to his South American tour of Brazil and Peru between November 14 and 19. A federal judge said Meta Platforms CEO Mark Zuckerberg is not personally liable in 25 lawsuits accusing his company of addicting children to social media. U.S. District Judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers in Oakland, California rejected accusations on Thursday that Zuckerberg directed Meta's efforts to conceal from children the serious mental health risks of using Facebook and Instagram. The plaintiffs called Meta's billionaire co-founder the guiding spirit behind alleged concealment efforts, saying he ignored repeated internal warnings about the risks and publicly downplayed them. But the judge found a lack of specifics about what Zuckerberg did wrong, and said, control of corporate activity alone is insufficient to establish liability. Her decision does not affect related claims against Meta itself. An official with Azerbaijan's presidency of next week's United Nations COP29 climate summit appeared to offer to facilitate talks about new fossil fuel deals ahead of the conference, according to a video secretly recorded by an advocacy group. In an investigation first reported by the BBC, nonprofit group Global Witness, which advocates against corruption, said it had set up a fake company to express interest in investing in Azerbaijan's national oil and gas company SOCAR, and in sponsoring the annual climate summit. When Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called Donald Trump to congratulate him on his presidential election victory, Tesla CEO and Trump supporter Elon Musk joined the call, according to media reports on Friday. During the 25-minute call on Wednesday, the day after the election, Trump told Zelensky he would support Ukraine, without providing details, and Musk said he would continue supplying Starlink satellites, Axios reported, citing unidentified sources. Mexico will continue pursuing measures to stop migrants from reaching its northern border with the United States, its top diplomat said on Friday, days after Donald Trump won the U.S. presidential election, vowing a new crackdown on illegal immigration. Foreign Minister Juan Ramón de la Fuente stressed that Mexico's model is working and will stay in place, pointing to data that shows the number of migrants caught by U.S. authorities at the border had fallen 76% since last December. The UN Human Rights Office said on Friday nearly 70% of the fatalities it has verified in the Gaza war were women and children, and condemned what it called a systematic violation of the fundamental principles of international humanitarian law. The UN tally since the start of the war, in which Israel's military is fighting Hamas militants, includes only fatalities it has managed to verify with 3 sources, and counting continues. The outgoing Biden administration pressed ahead on Friday with diplomacy aimed at reaching deals to end Israel's conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon, with Secretary of State Antony Blinken speaking to counterparts in the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. U.S. officials have said they will make a final push to reach deals on the conflicts, although it is unclear how much leverage they have over Israel and other actors in the region now focused on the incoming administration of former President Donald Trump. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas spoke with Donald Trump on the phone, congratulating him on winning the U.S. presidential elections, and saying he is looking forward to working with him to achieve a just and comprehensive peace, the official Palestinian news agency said on Friday. In its final months, President Joe Biden's administration has decided to allow U.S. defense contractors to work in Ukraine to maintain and repair Pentagon-provided weaponry, U.S. officials told Reuters on Friday, in a significant policy shift that aims to aid Kyiv's fight against Russia. A U.S. official, speaking on condition of anonymity, said the contractors would be small in number and located far from the front lines. They will not be engaged in combat. U.S. President Biden on Friday condemned attacks on Israeli soccer fans in Amsterdam overnight as despicable, and said they echo dark moments in history when Jews persecuted. Biden said in a post on X that the United States has been in touch with Israeli and Dutch officials. "We must relentlessly fight anti-Semitism wherever it emerges," he said. The ancient Roman archaeological park of Pompeii in southern Italy said on Friday it would cap daily visitor numbers at 20,000 as a response to its surging popularity. The change, effective from November 15, comes after a peak of more than 36,000 daily entrances on a free admission Sunday, the park said in a statement. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stressed the need to stop the fighting in Sudan and the need to support efforts to form a civilian government during a Friday call with United Arab Emirates Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the State Department said in a statement. Blinken also discussed the need to expand humanitarian access to Sudan and thanked the UAE for its provision of aid for Gaza and Lebanon, according to the statement. The premiere of a 19th-century play directed by John Malkovich was performed in an almost empty Sofia National Theatre after angry protesters irritated with the way Bulgarians are portrayed prevented visitors from entering the building. 1 hour before the opening of George Bernard Shaw's Arms and the Man on Thursday evening, protesters started gathering in front of the theater, Nova TV reported on its website. Jewish students in Vienna on Friday prevented the first far-right speaker of Austria's lower house of parliament from laying a wreath in remembrance of the Nazis' 1938 Kristallnacht pogrom, arguing he was abusing the memory of its victims. After the Eurosceptic, Russia-friendly Freedom Party, FPO, won the most seats in a parliamentary election for the first time in its history in September, the new lower house elected FPO nominee Walter Rosencrantz as its speaker 2 weeks ago. No other candidate has come forward to challenge World Trade Organization head Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala's bid for a second term at the Geneva-based trade body, 2 sources said. Although Donald Trump's return to the White House may mean her reappointment is still not guaranteed. The deadline for candidates to apply for the top job is midnight. A WTO spokesperson could not immediately be reached for comment on Friday. Brazil's Solicitor General's office said on Friday that it is suing Italy's Enel for 260 million reais, $45.12 million, in collective restitution due to damages caused by last month's power outage in São Paulo, Latin America's largest city. It also requested individual compensation for all consumer units that remained without power for more than 24 hours during the outage, with an estimated total cost of at least 757 million reais. Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Friday demanded a calm debate from Germany's squabbling factions on setting the date for a snap election to pull the country out of a political crisis. Speaking to reporters in Budapest, Scholz called on parties to first agree on what legislation could be passed in what remained of the current parliament, but denied trying to ram through his own policy agenda by delaying holding an election. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar met Dutch Justice Minister David Van Wiel and far-right leader Geert Wilders in Amsterdam on Friday afternoon to discuss the assaults on Israeli soccer supporters in the city. "I emphasize that the Netherlands strongly condemns the violence and that there is no place for hatred and anti-Semitism," Van Wiel said on social media platform X.